So I'm here with Tommy Hood, and we're at the Canadian Northern Railroad, which is an HO scale railroad. It's a fairly large railroad. It takes about 20 people to operate it roughly. And what we're going to do is go through a session today of painting backdrops. One of the biggest problems when you go to a lot of these large size model railroads is that you have these many aisleways that go back and forth and back and forth, and it never seems that the club or the people that own the layout can get around to expanding that horizon line along those areas. And painting backdrops has always seemed to be a cumbersome thing, especially when you see hundreds of feet that are required to be done. Tommy invited me about I guess a couple of years ago now to come over and try painting some of his backdrops, and I learned a lot just by going up and down his aisleways. And you can see to his right, my left there is some of the backdrop that we've been doing. So today what we're going to do is extend along a session. How long was this section here, Tommy?
About 25 feet.
Yeah, so there's 25 feet here, and what I'm going to show you is how one person can basically do about 6 feet an hour. What is this section called along here?
It's a large town called Hammond.
Right, and I look, there is a painted backdrop that's been painted years ago, I guess, here, right?
Yes.
And what happened here is you were changing the track plan to give it a little bit more action?
Yes, we changed the track plan and we changed the scenery. Was a stream going down the far side,
yeah.
And we just couldn't make it look realistic.
Right.
So we decided to basically scrap the whole idea and put it back into a town site.
Right.
So there will be 4 buildings in here, which will allow lots of local switching.
So it'll be kind of like the edge of town, so you don't expect to see painted cityscapes along the back wall then?
No.
So like in most of these towns, the tracks didn't run down the middle of them, especially in Canada. I guess in the States to some degree there are towns.
They do it west.
Yeah.
They do right through the middle of the west.
But your plan here is for that not to happen. Could you see possibly some building cutouts on the wall or anything like that? Building
cutouts. Okay. Yes.
So let's talk about the strategy a little bit. We're going to leave the sky because it was painted some time ago, and it's not that critical along here. It looks pretty good. It looks like it was done with an airbrush or with a spray bomb with a cutout or something along those lines. And there is a white horizon line just in here. And then, so we're looking at maybe raising the scenery a little bit higher. By doing that, then you can place some buildings, possibly about maybe 3 inches cutouts on the wall. And then what we'll do is we'll paint in front of those, and then you'll have your real scene. So what you're going to do is create your real buildings, your flats, your cutouts, and then the scenery to the horizon. Yes. So we're looking at possibly scenery that's going to run about a foot high, roughly all the way along this 24-foot section. And by the end of the day, once it's all dry, you'll be able to go back and decide where you want to have those cutout buildings and force some perspective here, and then the real scenery will go in. You'll have a finished scene. Now, have you ever tried doing any of this painting yourself?
Not much.
You did a little bit. I'm a good
painter with a roller, but nothing else.
Okay, well, you did a good job with the rolling. Hopefully there's a few more people with a bravery out there that'll be watching the video that'll give some of this technique a try. It's something that I have done before and have done several clinics on. And I produced a DVD of one, I think it was about 2 years ago, about how to do a scene. But what I'm trying to do here mainly is help guys in the big layouts to get on with it and start painting all that footage. Exactly. Okay, well, thanks a lot, Tom. I guess it's time to get started with the work.
Thanks.
So how do we get started with this? Well, I really recommend that you get one of these wax paper palettes. They're available at art supply stores. The advantage of them is you just squirt your paint on it, do your mixing, and when you're done you can just peel it off, and it's an easy cleanup. It's also nice because you can continuously use different parts of the palette, and there's lots of space on it. Paint-wise, we're going to use a very limited number of paints today. All the greens are going to be created for your hills and forests using these two colors here. They are high viscosity acrylic colors. The brand name is called Pavio. I like this brand because I find when you mix the colors they closely match. The Woodland Scenics materials that we use is more on the yellowy green side than on the bluey green. Now, to create the color green, rather than using the straight green out of the box, you can see the colors over here probably were done with a straight green. They have a blue tinge to them. And on this side over here you can see there's a much more greenish tinge, or a yellowish tinge to the green. How you make that is by mixing Mars Black, which is number 26 in this brand, which is a blue-based black with yellow. And this is just a medium yellow, primary yellow, and the two in combination will create that yellowish green that you want. And by varying what's on your brush in the mix, you're going to end up with different shades, either lighter or darker. More yellow will make it light. Obviously, black is a powerful color, so when you're painting, the yellow is the dominant amount that you want. So that's that. Now, as far as brushes go, I've got several different kinds of brushes down here. Probably the most important one when you're doing lots of footage is having a large brush. And this is what I call my dabber brush. It's quite large. It's a number 12. It's made by Squirrel. It's a Chinese brand bristle brush. And basically, you stick your paint right in this, and you push it against the surface. And what happens? The bristles, they splay out, and they create like a tree branch or a blast of tree. And by doing these daubs all the way along, what you're doing is creating a forest effect. Now, we're not getting very fancy in here in terms of the types of forest that are going to be there. They're going to be kind of like a mixed forest. There will be a lot of conifers and as well as deciduous trees. I'm not going to do much thinking along this line. The only thing I'm concerned about is having color variation in each blob and using lighter colors on the sunny side of the street. So we'll get on with the painting now, and you should be able to do about 6 feet an hour. I think anybody can do this action, this move, pushing and blobbing and pushing and blobbing. The finer work as far as doing your conifer trees, I use a fan brush, and you can see some of the conifers here, and they're usually foreground type trees, and you just blast them in front of your background scenery, and I'll show you how I do those, and that creates depth by having large-scale trees in front of the stuff that's farther away. Any other additional things, if you want to get some fine detail in, you can use these types of brushes here. They're very, very stiff, and you just apply little short half-inch up strokes like this, and it creates hundreds of little trees in the distance. Something along like what you see in here. And if you want to do big fields, you just swath along your brush on a horizontal plane rather than a vertical plane. So instead of painting the wall like this, we're going to be painting them like that, and that'll create little happy little fields. So, any questions? Haha, I bet you have lots. Well, that'll be my next step, is to start the painting. So I got about 24 feet here to do, and hopefully I'll get it done even faster than 6 feet an hour. So in this particular scene here, you can see that the backdrop had been painted previously. The sky is very good, as I indicated before, so there's no real need to go over it. It does help in terms of determining where the horizon line is going to be. I think what we need to do is to raise it a little bit here, probably about another 6 inches above where the existing hilltops are, and by doing so, that'll allow us to create a little more depth in the scene than there currently is there. The other thing is too is that with the current horizon line being only about 6 inches from the roadbed, you have a tendency to really feel like you're the Jolly Green Giant over top of the railroad, where as it raises up, what that'll do is make you feel like you're more in the scene. So here's the colors, and you can see as I used a big blob of yellow and a big blob of black. And it's simple. I'm just going to grab some yellow and a touch of black and mix them together here, and you can see that there's sort of a green effect that's coming. Now it's not thoroughly mixed. As you can see, there's some black, there's some yellow, and it's kind of in a very irregular pattern, and that's perfect. And there's some on my brush, but not quite enough. I like to really load up the brush, so I'm going to add a lot in there and create as you can see, it's kind of dark, so I'll just keep going to the right until I see it lighten up a bit. That's pretty good right there, and there's lots on the brush. So it's simple. I'm going to start about where I see the top of the forested hills, and I'm going to start blobbing. And you can see that I've already done about 6 inches by about 3 inches just with the first load on the brush. So I'm just going to keep going along there. And the real critical thing when you're doing hills is you don't want them to be regular. Irregularity is important because real forests are never regular in shape. The other thing you want to do is make sure you extend along the horizontal plane as far as you can, because we're dealing with 24 feet here, and if you have foot wide mountains, it has a tendency to look like camel humps. So we want to dispose of the camel humps. You can see now I've done about 2 feet by about 3 inches. I'm now going underneath what I've done, and I'm blobbing down towards the track level. As I get lower, I can change the color pattern, and by doing so you can see the shades are starting to change. You want to get a little bit closer there, Leela, so that people can see what I'm doing. And you can see I'm just blobbing along underneath, blob, blob, blob. I think anybody can do this. You can see the brushes splaying. After you've done this a few thousand times like this, you get the idea that it's rather repetitive. And sometimes it's really nice to have some music, because depending on whether you're using rock or classical, the actual look of your blobs changes. So if you want that real harsh, Rocky Mountain look, you probably want some Pink Floyd or something like that playing, where if you want a nice sort of soft look, you might think about something by Strauss. Okay, so you can see some dark there. You can always just lightly go over top to lighten it out. You can see the angle there is about 45 degrees. You probably want to lessen the angle to more like 30 degrees. So I'm adding here on just a little on top to create more of a 35 degree slope. This is more realistic. Sometimes you do have sharp slopes, but typically what that means is that you may have a pattern where over the winter there could be a landslide and it would break away, the land would break away. Now I'm following down the slope angle, and that's how you generate the hillside, is by moving down the slopes, just like you would on earth on a mountain. It typically slides down. So I start at the top and I work down. You don't have to, but it helps in terms of keeping the shape of the very top to generate a certain look. Now, I'm not going to go much higher than this. The reason being is that if it goes above your eye level, then it becomes less realistic. You can see I'm already up in the clouds to some degree here. So I've been moving along, and now I'm at the top of the hill, and I'm creating an irregular top to the mountainside there, and I'm just blobbing in. These mountains here, they look to be about, right now about a mile or two away from the track. But I'm only going along the tops right now. I'm not finishing it to the bottom, because as you get more towards the track level, this is how you're going to create depth, by creating fields and the like in your scene. Now you may want to generate just a field not having any forest, and I'll give you an example of that. I just take my loaded paintbrush and I pull down like this, and you can see by just pulling down I am creating a field.
Lighten it up.
Now this is dark right now, and it'll have to stay dark, but that's okay, because you want shadows to start with, and eventually I'll put a light layer on top of it. And then what I'll do is paint in front. By painting in front of it, it now pushes back the fields that you, or the forest line that you see in behind there. Just by doing that. Now I'll probably go back and use some beiges and browns in there, or whatever color that I see fit to color that field. But right now I'm just happy to use that coloring that you see. Now, when your brush becomes overused, you'll start to see this kind of pattern in here where there's not much generated. It's not like this. It doesn't have its prettiness of the splayed effect, and that usually means that it's getting a little too wet. So there's a couple things you can do. You can use a paper towel and dry out your brush and take some of the paint out of it, but the bristles get soft. So what I try to do is I have a lot of these brushes, and I'll go to a new brush to make it work better. But for now I'm just going to continue on a little bit here, because I am still getting the splayed effect. And the other trick is to make sure that you're not mixing your paint too much on your palette. That'll cause you to lose the effects that you're trying to create with these little circular blobs. If you find that there's a spot you don't like, just go back through and paint it out. You can use just straight yellow over top of the green there. And by painting it out, you eventually can go back in with another color and make a field. Something like that. Remember to try to keep that 30-degree angle. Sometimes you can create a slope that's a little more powerful. Maybe here. I'm just drying this in right now. It's not the final effect, but it gives you an idea of what a slope could look like. Okay, so this is getting kind of messy and blobby here. I hate wasting paint, so I'm just going to paint that on there. We'll see what we can do with that later. This is another way to dry out the brush quickly, until all the paint's out of it. Then you can go back in, grab some paint, and create better blobs again. Like so. Anyway, I'm going to throw that brush in there for now, and as you see, I've done about 4 feet here and about halfway down. So progress is going. We've been chatting here for maybe about 10 minutes, and so if I keep going at this rate, I should finish the 24 feet in a few hours. There's a brand new brush. You can see the difference. It really splays nicely. So lots of brushes, either that or have a system of cleaning them up quickly and drying them out. Maybe use a hair dryer or something like that, and you'll be good to go. And I'm coming back down to towards the horizon here. And you can see now I've got one hillside here, and it's covering an area about 6 or 7 feet. And that should be right for a layout size like we're talking about. So you imagine if you had your team there and they were all down for a Saturday, that if you started them in different sections of your layout, that if you had 8 or 9 people going, you'd probably have your layout painted by the end of the weekend, just using a technique like this. So I'm going to continue along here, and what will happen is I'll periodically come back and show the progress.